Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. It's so wonderful having you here with us. And we're so excited to have Cathryn Shea here with us to read from her new book, Genealogy Lesson for the Laity. She just recently released it, and you can pre-order it. I will be sharing that link in just a little bit. And I always want to start every program by saying thank you so much to everyone who donates to us. It means multitudes to us. You have no idea. Everyone's been struggling clearly with the quarantine, and our museum is expanding rapidly through events like this. So every little bit really helps us continue with these online events and to continue growing and sharing contemporary poets and sharing Whitman's legacy with so many people now, more people than ever. So we really appreciate every little bit of donations that we get, and we would love to have it if you wanted to visit our website. And again, we have so many upcoming events. Every single week we have another Zoom event, and eventually we're going to have hybrid events, which we're looking forward to too. And I also want to say you can visit us in person if you're nearby in Huntington, Long Island, and you can visit the birthplace of Walt Whitman, which was built by his father, who is obviously a very talented carpenter because the house has been there over 201 years ago. And Whitman's birthday back in May, he was 201 years old. So definitely plan to visit if you're in the area and you're able to visit us in person. But of course, virtually, we love having you join us as well. All right, so I'm gonna come back. There we go. Okay, and again, we're so honored to have Cathy Shea with us here tonight. Let me do that. There we go. We're so honored to have you with us here, Cathy. It's wonderful. There is a relation. Our names are very similar, and I wanted to give a shout out to my grandfather for connecting us. I had no idea there was a poet in the family, so thank you so much for that to my grandfather. And I do want to talk a little bit about upcoming events really quickly, and then we will get started right away. Next week, we will have on Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Andrew Rimby joining us. And you might remember him. He gave a tour on Zoom a few weeks ago of Jane's Hill, which is where Whitman hiked nearby the birthplace. So if you missed that, you might want to check it out on our YouTube. And we have videos of all of our previous events on our YouTube. But for next week, he'll be talking about when Oscar Wilde met Walt Whitman. A lot of people don't know that they ever crossed paths, but Oscar Wilde went out of his way when he was doing his American tour to meet Whitman. So it'll be a fascinating discussion. Please join us for that a week from today at 6:30. And then the following week, we'll have Bree Onisha. She's a local poet. She's amazing. I've seen her perform a few times. She usually sits on the floor while she's performing, so I'm sure she'll have some interesting ways of conveying her poetry. She's a great performer. So join us for that the following Thursday at 6:30 p.m. And of course, everything's up on our website and our Facebook and all of our social media, so please follow us. And if you're interested in getting our email blast for all of our upcoming events, you can always email me. I'll have it there in the chat as well. And we'll have Cathy Shea's new book, the link for that in the chat too. All right, so without further ado, Cathy, I'm gonna hand the spotlight over to you. Thank you for being with us. There we go.
This is great. I'm so happy to be here with everyone. So I'm gonna start out by reading one of my signature poems that I published a while ago, because you'll see. Eyeglasses. They're lined up like little doll caskets, my glasses cases. I went through my teens without corrective lenses, wondered later if impaired vision accounted for my falling asleep every ninth sentence when reading textbooks. Having one pair worked a couple of decades. Four eyes I was. On several occasions, men asked me to remove my glasses and then said, "You are very attractive. Have you considered contacts?" I did many times, the little dents on my nose becoming more persistent. Now I have lenses staring at me from all over the place. My nightstand, the computer, near the sofa, my car, each for a different type of seeing. 10 eyes, you could call me. If this keeps up, call me infinite eyes. When I finally go, maybe I should be laid to rest in a black faux alligator coffin, like the case for my designer sunglasses, the inside lining static-free felt, with my surname engraved in gold leaf Perpetua font. It would have a spring hinge, and I'd be draped with a pink microfiber cleaning cloth. For my mother's viewing, the undertaker said, "Bring a pair of her glasses. She'll look more natural." And now I'd like to, I'm gonna, thank you. A lot of people can relate to that probably. I'm going to read a selection from this book. This is my first full-length book coming out, and I have a picture of the cover because I don't have the book in my hands yet. This is the, well, it's probably looking backwards to you, but it's called Genealogy Lesson for the Laity, and it's due to come out September 29th, and I just discovered that some family and friends have already received their copies because the publisher was worried about the post office. Is it any wonder? And they mailed stuff out early. Another book that, this one was in 2019, is called, that's backwards too, but it's called Backpack Full of Leaves, because I am a huge Whitman fan. And this is a chapbook it's available on Amazon. Anyway, I'm giving myself, these are my plugs for what's going on here with publishing. So these are from Genealogy Lesson for the Laity. Today's advisory. The morning sprinkles powder into my eyes. What I hope was a dream oozes out my left ear. I tune a crystal on a wavelength stuck in gunk. Ice on the road, the slime of life suspended. Advisory on the ancient radio, chains required today. I should oil that dial, stuck on the weather. The blizzard in my nightmare couldn't be real. I should slide out of bed, catch the tram to a wakeful state, where the calendar grows fat, where I can shovel my plans into days before they leak all over the slush pile of intentions. But I think there's still a bad freeze out there. I'll just wait for my comforter to become less viscous. And you know, the arc of, or the sort of the theme of this genealogy, it's such a weird title, but this book is family and how we're all connected. And hopefully, I mean, it's amazing to me how the world is, we're so connected in the world. Family tree. A roiled reach of shoal beyond the gate, the surge, descent, and resurrection of orphan timber. The tide reverses, fosters erosion of the cliffs, shifts the silt of the ocean floor and beach. My family tree floats out there, part of so much flotsam, branches sheared off in the waves. I was born 20 miles from this grave of shipwrecks, where gulls eye fertile tide pools from the rocks. The acorn that grows from earth to heaven is a story told a different way for each new life. Family tree in shadow and fog. What it shows is always the same. Family, photos in boxes. Stand to one side. No, come closer. The scenes and albums are serene. Old tree, made up of missing answers. I shall never put you together in one piece. Your testament's lost in fire and flood, war and want. Early advice to kindergartners. Learn from the praying mantis. Be reincarnated as a blue-belly lizard. Flit into an underworld where shadows sort themselves and sprout. Be suspect if you're blindfolded a lot. You can't understand what I'm saying yet. You might be living in a bad neighborhood or in a euphemism for war. That's kind of a sad one. This poem is, I was working in the computer industry for many years. That was my day job. And I worked in this real vibrant area of San Francisco that was just booming. I mean, really booming. And down the street, there was this place where Jack London was born. It was just right down the street, and it's become a bank. But that was the birth spot of Jack London. It just I used to be amazed, walk past that on my lunch hour. So that inspired this poem. Chance of a lifetime. San Francisco at the present time is like the crater of a volcano around which are camped tens of thousands of refugees. Jack London. The boom is at its apex, and I take N. Judah, the last leg of my commute, along Embarcadero to the foot of 3rd, where Packbell Park screeches its Coliseum shape into existence, honeycombed with scaffolding, hard hats swarming jackhammered sidewalks. Plywood tunnels guide me past the burnt pork smell of the drive-through donut place, past granite facades to my job, where the dot-com startup bristles with important confusion, wine going online, Napa Valley delivered to Iowa tax-free. On my lunch break, down the street, I find a marble plaque embedded with a lonely headstone in the defunct Wells Fargo branch, marking Jack London's birthplace. His mother's story long forgotten, how she tried suicide, abandoned by her lover, pregnant and penniless. The small revolver's bullet deflected, she accepted grudgingly Nancy Slocum's generosity and shelter, gave birth right at this spot, in peace, out of wedlock. I don't think she'd care that the bay is silted in under the construction zone. A creek named after excrement flows where the beach was. I care that Jack London was born here, was almost not born anywhere. The rising baseball stadium disavows scandal before a giant even spits on the new sod, disowns its birth name like a runaway. Its being will shift with the inevitable trembling under the city's relentless renewal. And here's one about, my family origins. You know how all our families, you've got two parents, and then you've got the grandparents, and it goes on from there. So in America, when you say, well, you're part this and you're part that, and, it's how many of us are really, I'm completely, well, maybe some of us are like, I'm completely Irish. Well, I sound really Irish, but I'm really a total mixture of a lot of things. Enos is not the real family name. I'm walking in Provincetown and I notice the name Enos on mailboxes. Then I see Portuguese bread here. And when I stop for lobster bisque, I see on the menu Portuguese baked clams because, my friend tells me, Azores Portuguese settled here. And I think of my maternal grandfather, Anthony Victor Enos, explaining when I was young, his parents came from peculiar sounding islands, Pico and Fayal. I try to release myself from the distraction of the picture window, looking out on the charming harbor where Enos seems to be everywhere, so I can remember what I've been told as a child. For what I can't remember, I devise a past of how my grandfather and his sisters drove to California in a black Model T, each packing one suitcase to hold everything dear. I can only project grainy images of them laughing and worrying their way across the Great Plains and Rockies. Their parents, my great-grandparents, came through Ellis Island and settled in Providence, Rhode Island, a place I've still never been in my life because the priority of visiting my grandfather's birthplace got buried in the grind of marriage, motherhood, and job. And now I'm visiting the East Coast for the first time, and in my skewed sense of geography, I thought Providence was right next door to my friend's town with its art galleries and knickknacks on Commercial Street. My grandfather blamed the government for indifference to immigrants, their family origins and traditions. The customs officers assigned Enos to multitudes of Azores Portuguese. He kept saying he loved his father's true surname, Oliveira, for olive tree. He would have Americanized it to Oliver. Enough, Enos, he swore, his olive skin turning red with this resentment he took to his grave. If I could talk to my grandfather now, I would tell him what I found out. Myriad Azorean boys were christened the same middle name after patron Saint Ignatius. Enos is from Inácio, which Azores Portuguese pronounced Enos. My grandfather's father, Antonio Inácio Oliveira, accepted the new family name for the new country he was entering, the new life in Providence. I must steal from other stories, other Enos histories, and merge the made up with the supposed facts, which I can never know. Great-grandfather was a whaler, great-grandmother was a tailor, immortalized in fragments of family tales, daily details of strife vague, harpoons and thimbles lost. So much like so many of us, we love to do our genealogy and ancestry, and but the stories, so many of the real stories are lost, you know? Okay, and this is the namesake poem, and this poem received a Best of the Net award. I couldn't even believe it. I was so happy with that. Genealogy Lesson for the Laity. The genome of my aunt is in the family. Straight-laced, she drank gin from under the sink, worked hard, flew in the sky, and was forlorn. Did you know her? She lived in all our neighborhoods. We loved to solve her crosswords and steal rhubarb tarts and sneak a peek at her rubber girdle. It was a hard lesson for an 18-year-old. I could be sassy, and she'd slap the song out of my lungs. Her old bromides aside, gloom could tread and tread our tangles and tug at her hem. I buried my key to her house in the skirts of the weeping willow. Spring nailed its velvet wrist to my outstretched arm. I know. I breastfed my children. It was kind of a big deal at the time when people were doing that, because it wasn't, you know, people were just starting to get back into doing that. So this poem was inspired by that. My grandmother's bosom. She bound her chest with an ace bandage because she couldn't afford a proper side lacer brassiere, and her breasts were too ample for the drop waist flapper shift she was after, the androgynous schoolboy flatness all the rage. The tight binding ruined her muscles, she said when I asked why her breasts sagged on her middle. I was little and used to bothering her with inappropriate questions. And I worried about her body's droop, different from what I was used to in her aproned house dress. When I was about to have my first child, I wanted to know if she breastfed my mother. No, she said. Formula was ultra-modern, forward, freeing up time that might otherwise have been spent nursing out of sight, hidden from prying eyes, judgments expressed in reproof. Is baby getting enough? She and my mother were captivated by what I told them about La Leche League, helping parents, families, whole communities to breastfeed, chest feed, human milk feed their babies. Breastfeeding was radical, paradoxically avant-garde to them. They wanted me to succeed, but they couldn't resist worrying, blurting out the question that nagged them, is baby getting enough? Determined for her first baby to thrive on her breast milk, my daughter became anxious when he didn't latch, his little mouth scrunching and sucking air, heeding the hated formula just in case. How we scurried about, frantic, in between coaxing him onto nipple, weighing, checking diapers, anxious about his tongue's frenulum, plagued by worry. Is baby getting enough? I bought her Guinness Stout because that's what boosted my milk supply. Baby still struggled at her breast. Fenugreek seed has been used to increase milk production since biblical times, said the lactation consultant. 3 capsules, 3 times a day. Add tincture of blessed thistle, 20 drops, 3 times a day. Then domperidone, 3 tablets, 3 times a day. My poor daughter sated on herbal remedies while I sipped bubbly wine. We drove all over creation gathering prescribed ingredients. My daughter devoted her day and night to the regimen while milk leaked and squirted, her breasts overflowing, my grandson gulping and spitting up. Is baby getting enough? Okay, here's one of my, maybe one of my raciest poems. You'll see. You'll see, tell me what you don't have to tell me what you think. Okay. The undercover activity of poplars. I caught them this dawn, blinking their leaves in code. The way they touched, I knew they were exchanging intimacies. Their fluttering entranced me, turned pages in my brain, and I entered this pulp romance of a past lover tumbling in oatgrass. Chambray shirt unbuttoned, me spread like a picnic, back sticky with sap. Then my poplars let go and tipped their crowns in a hasty farewell when you woke up, and I said hello to mounting sun, our day just swelling. Here's one inspired by just one of those household things we're always, people that have houses have to put up with. Drano didn't work. Roy's sewer service is here, and from the roof of this 2-story we call home but don't own, Roy himself, no, it couldn't be Roy, because the guy up there just grunts, yep and nope. He's sweaty in worn pants. He isn't listening to a word I'm saying. And wouldn't Roy himself at least act as if he cared about my opinion? Let's say a man who I wish were Roy himself is shoving a clean-out router down the maw of this house, which has accumulated many years of cloggage. Is that a word like baggage is a word? And the walls resound and groan, and all I can think is, this place is going to have one very sore throat. Inspired by children. The next one. Letter of appreciation. I am no small giver to small charities. In spite of a mind is a terrible thing to waste, printed on this ornate letter, which with its flowery thank you for something someone has imagined I've done or am about to do, I am sending no money today. Not even the reply I'm thinking. Ink, paper, and postage are terrible things to waste. And on behalf of every bright child, I am crumpling up and discarding this misplaced praise with its machined decollage and cliche in gold laser printed lettering, but I'll keep the address labels that came with it. My own children dropped out of college, one after he broke an ulna and had mono and questioned the reason for living. The other after she told me on the phone she hated her roommate, her classes and teachers, essentially hated the whole world. I went to college and worried I wasted my mind, but got a degree anyway. I must have failed to teach my children not to be afraid to waste their minds. Or maybe they were saving their minds for some other time. Here's another sort of ancestor poem. Horses in dust and ash. Here is a mare, duff-colored and mane bedraggled, galloping ahead of a wall of airborne dirt. Texas Panhandle, 1938. She's driven to run a furious line, her nostrils smothering. The mare haunts me, like those workhorses in a hayfield rearing in front of volcanic Tefra, South Iceland, 2010. I remember the caption, "The ash saved a lot of money on fertilizer and grass grows best where the most fell." Today, I let the apple tree drop its full load of fruit, rotting with wormholes where I haven't scooped them up. Apples feed the soil within the root shadow. Maybe I will take better care, prune and cull for next season. Where my relatives live in Oklahoma is green and lush now, the old timers buried with firsthand memories of the choked land. I've lost touch with that branch, visiting once at a 100-year reunion. With my father, I saw the old home church at the Oklahoma Land Run starting line. Our cousins decided not to save the family's sentimental congregation place, as if they even could. Let our landmark sink, return its disintegrating timber to the soil and weeds of forebears. And with this is the last poem I'm going to share from the book, and then I have a few others to read. Oakland. My grandfather drove a truck for the People's Bakery of Oakland, went on strike for workers' rights in Oakland. My mother played marbles, rode horses, sculled on Lake Merritt when she was a girl in Oakland. My father got stationed at Coast Guard Island, fell in love with my mother at a dance in Oakland. The earthquake wiped out my grandmother's girlhood street when the freeway collapsed in Oakland. There's no there. I was slow to realize Gertrude Stein was talking about Oakland. And I was born in Oakland, as was my mother. Okay, well, that's Oakland, California. I don't know if you guys know, it's across from San Francisco. It sort of gets a bad rap these days. So here, these are poems. Let's see what I've got here. You know, writing during the pandemic, at first I thought, God, I don't feel like, my friends, we were all saying, we don't feel like writing. We just feel everybody's just having a terrible time. And then all of a sudden, I don't want to put a curse on it, but I started writing, thank God, and it felt really good. So I'll share some of the really newer stuff I have here. Know the dahlias. Oh, this self-grown drunk on meditations, my couch like a plush pew, the blankness made bearable by a recollection of dahlias and all their relatives invited here. The sunflower, daisy, chrysanthemum, zinnia, lush in forgotten scat and manure of their floriculture, tender leaves. How I long for clouds of insects, to be bothered by them like in my childhood. I grieve even for the gnats and no-see-ums that used to pester us with their swarms on a summer evening. The racked spines of folding chairs, a great ambient snore of cars and dusk's creatures. My limbs are stiff with reruns and solitaire, fixed in unguent of molasses minutes, dicotyledonous. Blessed be the calving. Set aside worries and regrets, sow with zeal. Forget all complaints, candlelight fringed, personal beasts, muttering like rows of folding chairs before a concert. Read the future in the crystal bowl that once belonged to a grandmother. It saw her wedding. How many ambrosias since? Sweating glaciers send postcards of themselves. Empire's response, a Panglossian hosanna. Blessed be the calving. Some unexpected news. A heartburn medication may have caused your cancer. You may qualify for a cash reward. As if it matters. Now that your heart burns and there is a tumor growing inside you. At least my ancestor was not left on a doorstep that I know of. At least a little token of her is not on view at the Foundling Museum, a small charm engraved with Mariah. At least the tether between mother and child was not severed, the birthright slate wiped clean with a new name like Helpgood Hopeless. Newspapers unfold their dated bulletins. The placement of urgency fails. Scholars of nothing in particular, with their continuum of effort, fill dustbins of the internet. In the slack-jawed dawn, lamps still lit, scorch their way to and fro. Yeah, these poems, well, it's been fun writing some really different, let's say different poems. Hewing wood with a darling axe. What engines do we make? To fish, to hunt, to destroy? Of all our harrows, reality spangles. I wear a mantle, a magnetic ghost that attaches to my shoulder blades. Sometimes brainsick, hewing wood with a darling axe. Pray for the Polyphemus moths mating, their little feet clinging to the vine, abdomen upon abdomen, clasped to each other. They appear to be dead, perhaps engaged in a long orgasm, insect porn. Leave them in peace. They are mating, propagating their diurnal species, only the two of them, so wonders will emerge with faith and purpose, their grubs to smell the world. Does anyone think they could make such a moth? Not a robotic model. Who could make a rib? Not just whittle one. We cartoon our planet. Who could make the mother of us? Not carve an effigy. Here's one inspired by many years. Oh, that previous one, I've been, until the smoke got really bad out here, my friends and I hike at least once a week, and we came upon these moths, huge moths, doing this, like mating. It was like, they were so big. It's just amazing. So that inspired, one of our friends told me exactly what moth that was. That inspired that poem. And I worked in the computer industry for many years, like I said. So I really had really crappy commutes, and my poor kids, I feel like they really suffered. But, you know, women were going back. I mean, everybody's working, right? And you're trying to raise kids. So it's pretty common in our country, I guess. The academia I never had. Cars spitting at the bushes along the road, past pink and green and purple houses, the golden cables of the bridge stable on 101 under the elbows and knees of the fog rolling in. An ice sculpture of words awaited me on the job. No time for gymnasiums or enticing perks. Only well-ruined hips, an idolater's sublingual pill of incantation until deadlines slapped me like a two-stroke engine. The academia I rejected after college when I absconded to a corporate job, a chain letter that kept going, away from daily motherhood, my poor latchkey kiddos. Does it matter now how much I love them? They were abandoned then, and I would squeegee myself home late in the long, bad commute, disassemble in the kitchen, and drain the family to bed. Here's a new one. Let's see, how are we doing for time? I guess we're doing pretty, are we doing pretty? Okay, so I'm gonna read this one because I'm still kind of, probably I'm still gonna have to work on this one, but anyway, okay. Dear monsters have escaped from the basement and can't even see the stitching used to sew the cadavers of my ancestors together. I did not shriek or rend my clothes, enigma tucked between my legs. The clues of one side of my ancestry on the wall in curlicue frames arranged just so. To stare back at progeny, how I miss them, their neglected graves, far flung as they are under suffering oaks, ribs of stone underneath. My own monster guts built of their DNA, monster guts built of their DNA, spectral and waiting, forever hunting deer, forever fishing trout, setting a table for the deep dish pie, my cabinet full of knickknacks from those lives, a full set of bone china, including gravy boat I haven't used in years, salt and pepper shakers in the shape of two googly-eyed pups hugging, between psalms, the silver-plated butter receptacle with its ingenious pocket for ice under the cut crystal dish, covered with round dome like a courthouse, and its blunt knife that sits in the broken cradle. Summers, my orphaned teenage mother, Summers, my orphaned teenage grandmother, who was raised by her sister, ran carrying this heirloom from the ice house to the ranch house dining table as fast as she could, and still the butter would melt. Her brother-in-law in from the field, he would flop on the floor in his clammy overalls, kick grassy boots off, legs outstretched in front of him, and he'd play with the dog, a little terrier, finally go and wash up, come back to the table in a clean undershirt to eat supper. My cabinet is full of leftovers from that ranch that my mother and uncle played at, full of bric-a-brac. No, personal effects that they used every day. The nesting stoneware pots with flat lids glazed with irises, crazed from the wood-burning oven. Years of recipes, some published in the San Joaquin County Cookbook. Side dishes of scalloped potatoes, broccoli au gratin, macaroni, and fontina. The gilt swell of sunset with its still air and insect noises, probably swallows, would come out then to feast and loop in boundless figure eights. The ranch lost, mortgaged to a ghost banker, long gone and buried too. Family ends up moving to town into a little stucco house with modern amenities like indoor plumbing, gas stove, icebox, and a piano that my aunt would play, who was really my first cousin once removed, with keys like baby teeth, keys to the cosmos of my past. The children of my children this is, number 2 part of this poem, second part of this long poem. The children of my children at my knees, wallowing, poking, tugging, making shrill animal noises, cereal boxes half full of warm milk, ripe bananas, crushed graham crackers dotted around the living space. Better to give them a trough. Floor dense with Legos and action figures and projectiles from plastic guns and unidentifiable parts scattered just so to inflict calamitous pain on feet. And Pokemon cards. But these are sacred, so they are organized and neatly kept in albums instead of family photos. These are my dearest monsters, from a galaxy of nebulous deeds, beloved beings, magnetic and malleable, the result of bygone pleasures and chance. That one, yeah, maybe that's better than I thought. Says a lot. Okay, let's see. I have two poems that, if we have time, still have time. Okay, because yeah, actually three poems I want to end on here. These are poems that were inspired by Black Lives Matter. I mean, you know, it's really been happening, right? On the day John Lewis Cason crosses the Selma Bridge, a beetle perishes in the skull of a jelly jar, slight creature of ardor, to dissolve at the hand of the puppeteer, shell like an armored car. You would think bugs would prevail forever, a collective buzz in the ear, and birds always feed on them in the thick air, the ether's edifice of matter. History of our being, a lacustrine blur on the muddy shore, given back to embrace of mother, wing like a mesh star. And then this one is a protest poem for George, because of George Floyd. It's just, you know, here I'm a white lady, but I had to do this. But nobody's accepted this yet, but I haven't really submitted it that many places yet. We'll see. To-do list during a pandemic ignored because of protests. The world is Monet's water lilies one day, and the next it's Goya's Saturn devouring his sun. Right after I wake up, I feel an urgent to-do list. Learn a new Lexis for isolating. Invent an egalitarian pronoun for we, as in we the people. Cocoon a realm. Mourn the brutal death of another Black person. Meanwhile, avoid the freeways. Meanwhile, avoid the downtowns. Meanwhile, avoid the smoke and mayhem down an alley. Meanwhile, learn how to bear the unraveling. Meanwhile, police tactics. They fire neon marking rounds, so later they find who was looting. Meanwhile, social distancing. Meanwhile, masses not social distancing. On a protester's t-shirt, nevertheless, she persisted. Meanwhile, I feel oblivious. Who is she? Meanwhile, it better be me. Meanwhile, tweed anonymity in the Senate. Meanwhile, we're not listening to twittering politicians. Meanwhile, under fluorescent lights, there's a cord you pull to start the engine. I mean the conversation. If it breaks, use a bootlace, but try not to strangle anyone. Meanwhile, the gash of an ATM on every corner. Meanwhile, old newsreels act as if they are new, and new newsreels act as if they are not the same old. Meanwhile, a pandemic and the swing of a hospital's revolving door. Meanwhile, mobs in masks, not because of the virus, because of tear gas and smoke. Meanwhile, we hunger for a vaccine that half of us will refuse. Meanwhile, storefronts mangled, laptops grabbed under a sky glittering with flashbang. Meanwhile, a makeshift memorial, bouquets and unlit candles. Meanwhile, white ladies pass counterfeit 20s and they are freed on their own reconnaissance. Meanwhile, what will it take? Meanwhile, your people say there has been no change. There has been no change. And let's end on a little more positive note. My last poem. The Kid on Holiday. I think this is right for ending, isn't it? I'm kind of lost track of time. Are we doing? Yeah, okay, perfect. The Kid on Holiday. You can still get a ticket for the open-air bus that runs through El Nino Torrance, destination to be revealed after you've paid with the lunch money of your childhood. You might fall off at a hairpin turn into a gutter or gully washer. The city ignores the bus. The suburb snubs the bus. A storm creaks open on rusted hinges. You think you'll get drenched. You want the stubbornness of a deluge. You want all hail to break loose. It's not about you and your parents and what happened when you were little, though the story is pleasant if you leave out the hard parts. And yes, there was a telephone. Do you remember its rotary dial and the short cord attached to the wall? There was no privacy, but nothing was ever recorded. Water spits through the gap teeth of the world. A cloud drools on your shoulder. You don't even need your earbuds and galoshes to love the piano notes of the puddle. And thank you, everybody. This is really great. So I think I have no concept of time here, really.
No, you're perfect. You're perfect.
Okay, good. Seems like a lot of poems.
A thumbs up.
Yeah.
I'm going to come back for a minute. Cathryn, that was absolutely amazing. It was so powerful. And I feel like you brought us so many different places, from like ancestry to the protests to insects, like the Drano one. I love the Drano one. That was one of the first ones I read. So I just want everyone to unmute for a moment so we can give a big round of applause. Very deserved.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yay! Excellent.
Wonderful.
Good job.
And then if anyone wants to
Thank you.
share any of their thoughts, their questions, you can write in the chat, or you can come on camera and share with us.
Thank you so much, you guys. Really, I really appreciate it. This is great.
All right. If anyone wants to just jump in on video, or if they want to type, totally up to you.
Well, I really related to so much of what you did. And is baby getting enough? Well, I got to tell you, I was the oldest nursing mom on Long Island. I nursed my son when I was 47.
Wow.
Which was insane. But anyway, but that was great. A lot of fun, really.
Oh, thank you.
Right on with all of those things. All the mom, the nature, the protests. Really good. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Kathy, this is Johnny Kelly from New York City, your cousin. And I just want to say, it does not surprise me at all that you did a great job. You know how much I love you for so many years. I'm very happy to hear you doing this. You know, you're a techie person. Now you're in the 21st century with Zoom. I'll send my donation out to Huntington for supporting this, and give my love to the entire family, and a big thumbs up, especially for the social commentary that I think is so important today. God bless you, Kathy.
Thank you, Johnny.
Thank you so much for that, and for the donation. We really appreciate it so much.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of great comments in the chat too. I won't read them all, but Kathy, I'll make sure you get a copy of them, because they're just.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice. Thank you, everybody.
And they're commenting about your lighthearted style, which I think is really amazing too. Even when it's the darker subject matter, it still has that great breath of fresh air and that humor in there.
Oh, great.
All right. Anybody else want to jump in? Any questions or comments? All right. Well, I want to say again, thank you so much for volunteering your time with us today from California, which is amazing as well. And I want to say to everyone who came tonight, thank you so much too. That means so much to us to have you here with us. Some of you come every week. We really appreciate it. It's been such a adventure with Zoom, but it's growing and we're growing in multitudes. And being able to share contemporary poetry and Whitman's legacy is just something that we wanted to get out there and we found a way. So thank you so much for being here. And I want to do one more round of applause because tonight was just amazing. So thank you so much, Cathryn.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Caitlin.
Yeah.
Good job.
Liz.
We love you.
Good job, Kathy.
All right.
Great.
Thank you
Just
for
found
joining.
my unmute. I've been on mute.
Thank you,
I've been
everybody, really. This is such a
I've been on mute again.
All right. So enjoy your week, everyone. And we hope to see you again very soon next week on Thursday. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.